Well, I was going to weld this thing out today, but I could barely see with my weld hood. Reason being, that's my hood. Let me get better. This is my hood. And I run a shade 12 lens in it because at work I do a lot of high amp stick welding and TIG welding, so I can see just fine. But when I started to weld on this guy, it's a little squiggly. I could not see anything when I was welding because on 45 amps with a number 12 shade, it really doesn't do so well. So gonna go ahead and throw the back end back together, cycle it up and down, and see what happens with the suspension travel. The thing zooms way in. Jesus. Alright, what I basically did is just set up a generic mount point somewhere up in this area. And I can take this guy and just set it on top of the upright. Let's stay about right there. And then we got half an inch, just a hair over half an inch. So let that hang down. And then take this back up to ride height. That was pretty much as low as it would have gone, as low as I want it to go. The ride height's set at 4 inches, so as soon as that block slides back under there, then we're at ride height. Of course, it's fucked up. Let's get both sides to ride height. Set it back down. Now it's at ride height. Put this back in, back down. Now we've got 5 inches. So there's roughly 4.5 inches of suspension travel where that's set up. So now the only thing I have to do is put this, get this angle in, hopefully set this so it'll stay right there. See if that center line is okay, get dimensions of the coilovers with the springs and everything, and make sure nothing's going to come in contact with the wheel Obviously I'm going to build a control arm to get around everything. The only other thing I was looking at is it's going to be real tight. Damn it, sit up there. When that thing's sitting dead nut center, it's going to be real tight with the toe arm that grabs the toe arm that grabs the pickup point on the upright. But what I can do for that is take this out. I know I've got a center point right here. Put a string down, or just put this thing dead center, maybe like hot glue it in there so it'll hold it, and then take all my measurements. Stupid thing. Take all my measurements around that and see if the actual dimensions of the coilover and everything will fit in here, and then ultimately this is going to be my pickup point for the shock right here, which is a little higher than I wanted, but that's roughly, oh Jesus, that's way higher than I wanted. So we might have to lower this point down a little more and try this again, because this is 20 inches. I wanted this to be around 16, 14 to 16, which will put the pickup point somewhere in here. So, but you get the basic idea of how to kind of figure out what your suspension travel is going to be. You want to set your chassis at ride height, take it all the way down. Either if the frame's hitting the ground if you want, or I basically took this down to where if the front was, if everything went down at one time, if the whole car like came over a hill and came down, it's probably going to come real close to maybe tagging the frame if the suspension cycles all the way up, but this will keep it to where hopefully it's not screwing around hitting the frame on the ground, because it won't be super low. As you can see, this being set at ride height, this is the bottom right here. This is usually probably somewhere close to a stock ride height on a 240. So that way I'll set the bed, set everything else over this, and it'll set it up to where it's not, come on. Yeah, that's the subframe. The very lowest part of the subframe is 7 inches off the ground. Control arms look pretty decent. Everything looks good, and that's basically where it's going to sit. Well, I figured out a better idea. I got rid of that thing on the unistrut and used the two. Come on. Hey. Holy shit, man. Yeah, I used the two nuts that I'd kind of made a conical seat on them to put in this, so now it'll have a lot more articulation than that piece of unistrut back there. So jeez, this thing is, there we go. So yeah, we'll try it again with this. So it's always good to have old parts laying around. That's a 2.5 inch coilover spring. So looks like everything's going to fit just fine. Obviously the spring's not going to be this short. It might be an inch longer, inch or two longer. But no, that should be it. I hope. Place the order for the coilovers. Now what I'm going to do is, well, let me get that spring out of there. Pretty sure it's not going to be a big deal, but take a screenshot from there for the angle. And then, oh yeah, I don't have to do anything. I'll get the, don't fall out, little guy. Take those guys out and lower it all the way back down. Hopefully the PVC stays where it's at. Oh. Yeah, that's not gonna work. Good job, dummy. Yeah. Well, try that again after I trim the all thread. All right, we'll try this again. And right after I cut it, I realized it's a piece of all thread. I could have spun the nuts up and ran it further through the heim joint. That way in the future, if I have to use it again for something longer, well, now it's not going to work, but oh well. Let's get another piece of all thread. Oop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to screenshot it at this angle. Screenshot it at that angle and see. Obviously, it didn't look like it moved really a lot at all. Just trying to figure out how many degrees the shock moves from ride height to fully compressed, which that didn't look like much at all. So it's probably really not even going to matter. Because basically what you're looking for is the more your shock is mounted away from 90 degrees, which straight up, if you have it mounted at 45, you still, I don't know how to explain this. If you have it mounted at about 45 degrees, and let's say you have a pickup point here and way over here, well, when that goes up, you've effectively, I don't remember what the number is, you've cut that. So the best way to run a shock is, obviously straight up and down, where it is going in one single direction, that's it. But if you tip it on a 45 and you have a mounting point up here and a mounting point down here, but it's only moving straight up and down, then you've effectively weakened this spring because the leverage is going to take over. But if you have a mounting point up here and a mounting point down here and it swings in this kind of swings on the angle, then it's not so much a big deal. It's just if you have like a mounting point over here and a mounting point down here and they only move up and down. Because then if your shock is at an angle, you're going to have to do math to figure out if it's a 500-pound shock, you're probably going to need, if you're running a 500-pound spring, you're probably going to need, Jesus, let's try this again. If, let's say, it called for a 500-pound spring for the rear weight of your vehicle, well, you're probably going to have to run a 550, a 600, a 625 to make up for it, because the mechanical advantage it's oh my goodness, dude, I don't know why I can't explain this. So let's say the rear weight of your vehicle requires you to have a 500-pound spring. Well, if it's on an angle like that, you're going to need to use a heavier rate spring because of the leverage that it has pushing on it. Whereas if your mounting point is on an angle and it's running with that angle, oh boy. So in this instance, where this is already on an angle, but when I screenshotted it at ride height and then lowered it all the way down and screenshot it again, if it only moves 2 degrees, then it's pretty much going to work 100%, so whatever the spring rate I need for this is going to work on this. I hope I didn't confuse anybody or really that up. But I think I explained it right. I don't know. Whatever. So if you watched the other video and you saw when I first showed that picture of that, this is the new updated piece, and it actually works way better because it pivots left and right, and so my original idea wasn't the best. But thankfully I had something in the shop to figure it out real quick.